Okay, how about now? Any sound coming through? Hopefully it is. I'm just waiting for someone to say in chat whether or not the sound's working. Yep, okay. Right, we're back. Apologies about that one. For some reason, my mic had switched off. The blue light was on, but it wasn't connecting. But we're here. Okay, so what are we really looking to talk about today? Well, as that clickbait title... Still no sound? Yep, sound. I don't know which one's got the sound here. Okay, right, I'm just going to go with it. A few people have said yes. Bitcoin closed 106,000 weekly close last week. Are we on the precipice of moving up to retest that all-time high? And I suppose the question I'm going to ask you all first is anyone in the chat not particularly bullish at the moment? That's probably the underlying question that I have, because yes, price action has been a little bit confusing over the last few days, but when we zoom out on the higher timeframes, as we'll do later on, you're going to see that there's nothing necessarily to be worried about, and there's plenty of at least from a technical point of view, from a price action point of view, plenty of indications that actually suggest that we are about to start another run up, certainly on Bitcoin. And we're always of the opinion that although Bitcoin may run faster, it normally carries the rest of the pack along with it. So we're going to have a look at that today. We're going to just cover a couple of very dull, but they do need to be discussed, legislation, regulation type of news events that have come up this week. People have talked about in Discord. I will cover those as quickly as I can because no one wants to hear about those, but they are important. So we'll just briefly cover those. We're going to have a look at some price action. We're going to have a look at some indicators that some people don't really give much respect towards, and that's fair enough, but they're there anyway, and people are talking about, so I want to go through those. We'll have a look at Bitcoin in detail. We'll go into altcoins in detail. We'll talk about Tau. We'll maybe have a little bit of reality thrown in as to how high this market may go. And then, of course, if there's any questions from yourself, please feel free to drop them in the chat. But since I wasted 3 minutes with no mic, let's just dive straight in. So the charts you all know to come and see. And this is what I'm talking about with Bitcoin. Top chart at the moment. But as we can kind of see, this is on the 3-day time frame. Okay? And this just looks fairly strong. Well, not even fairly strong. A very strong level of price action. Of course, end of March, beginning of April, it doesn't seem that long ago, although perhaps it feels it. We had that massive sell-off, tariffs being announced, Bitcoin bottoming in and around about 75,000. And then since the beginning of April, that progressive move up. And yeah, okay, it has seemed quite fast, that 75K to 106, 107,000. But actually, we've had a few areas of sort of just catching our breath on the way up. And there's a very good chance that actually these last 2 weeks have been just the same. We broke 100K back in the beginning of May, really. End of the first week of May, we broke for that 100K. Since then, we've kind of just been battling 100K to about 107,000. But given the price action that we've seen yesterday, maybe even Sunday as well, to be fair, although it was, as I say, it was quite confusing, it does look like we are now lining up for that next move up. Now, these lines on the chart here, the bottom two have been there for some time. I moved this one up earlier on today. And although we'll go into a bit more detail later on, just those 3 lines there, the most simplest form you can imagine of just support and resistance and price returning to resistance and support. And that is a classic example of what has happened even over the last day and a half. This top line at 102,000, I mean, it's 3-day time frame, it's not going to be the most accurate, but you can kind of see actually plenty of interaction in and around over the last 2 weeks. But actually, the 2 times that we have tested that 109, 108,000, price action has had some sort of resistance and support level in and around that 102. So we had it back on the 11th of December, we had it back beginning of the year, we had it in and around the inauguration kind of period before we fell away, and then we've had it here. So very basic support and resistance. Price has re-gone tested that. And okay, there's a day and a half left on this candle, but that is a strong looking candle at the moment, showing that at the very least in the last 24 hours, there's been a significant amount of interest at buying at that level, which is a good sign. We don't mind price falling that way as long as we can see it being rapidly bought back up, which it has, which on the very basic view of it indicates actually that we may be looking for another move up. We'll go through the other levels a little bit later on, We'll go through some of it on the smaller time frames there. But if we have a look at dominance, and I always remember that this one, my face in the way of this one. So again, that dominance is now starting to creep back up. It was a good sell-off from about 65.5% all the way down to about 61. Don't know why the EMAs are not on it. Let's just, what can I do? What's got an EMA on it? Down here, let's go dominance here on the daily. Okay, so the 64 level, that was one that I marked ages ago. We had a look down. Well, that's not what I was thinking. Not on the weekly. Yeah, okay, yeah, it is on the weekly, sorry. And then we've had that pullback here. It's come back onto the 20 EMA, which this entire run up, we've only hit the 50 EMA twice in 2 years. The majority of the time, it's been the 10 and the 20 EMA that has carried the dominance chart. And that's exactly what we've had here. We've had it body closing on the 10 EMA, but actually it's the 20 EMA, which we spiked down to and we bounced off. And again, this is kind of indicating to me that Bitcoin is likely to lead the pack. And I still think now we've cleared out that 64K, the more logical one, I'll go back to the previous chart, is now that 71% that I talked about last week. A lot of indications in the past 2 cycles. 71K has been the 71% has been the turning point for Bitcoin and the commencement of that alt season. And just given how close we are, I feel that that is probably going to be the next thing. The narrative is still very strong with Bitcoin. Altcoins are not particularly doing that well in comparison to Bitcoin. And if we actually have a look, this middle chart here, which used to be the total 3, I've actually changed it today to total 2, just because because Ethereum really hasn't pulled its socks up either. We might as well include it within it. And you can actually see this is where my worry still lies. Whereas Bitcoin has been climbing away, so it had that fall off, and it effectively it had this sort of double bottom pattern here. It's broken through the waistline and it's climbed back up, challenging all-time highs. You go to total 2, where if I can find it again now, that's total 2. Yep. We've had that double bottom, but we've not really cleared that waistline. Matter of fact, we're struggling to get through that waistline. We've actually had a bit of a clear rejection from it. Again, leading to, my theory at least, that Bitcoin dominance is probably going to rise. And I know some altcoins always do well, but just as a whole, that market is still struggling. And it seems to me that actually the narrative still very much BTC, still very much BTC ETFs. And I feel that that is going to continue. There's a lot of work that needs to be done for the altcoin market to get above that 1.26, 1.25, let's just round it down, trillion mark, and then make a real run. And if we're just going on basic support and resistance, 1.3 trillion is going to be another hurdle to get through. And then actually getting back up to 1.6. And that was only 6 months ago, that huge rally from the election result, in which altcoins moved massively, meme coins, everything just went up. Just since then, we've just not had that return. Bitcoin is challenging all-time highs. There's rarely any other altcoin that is challenging their December high, never mind their all-time high. So just something to think about there. And if we have a look at BitTensor, oops, that's not BitTensor. BitTensor here. So these support and resistance lines I've drawn for some time, but actually we're not even looking at EMAs, just having a look at the slanted support and resistance. BitTensor, very strong move off that 160 bottom through that, had a bit of a reaction in and around this resistance level. We broke through it, and then it's actually come back down, and we are finding support on that at the moment. That's quite nice. And when we look later on in more detail with market maker theory and everything else about which level and rises and consolidation periods, that kind of fits in quite nicely. So yes, BitTensor has fallen from about 490 about a week and a half ago, but it is finding some support in and around that sort of 400 level at the moment. So don't write it off just yet. That's certainly an area I would be looking at. If it does go, is there an opportunity to do a side step, not with a full bag, but with something? And we'll have a look at those options a little bit later on. Let's just see. Constantine's put, I was bullish until the daily exchange volume started to decline sharply again. That might be more related to the health of the alt market, though. Yeah, so I don't really use the volume indicator on it, but I do like to sort of see how volume is moving. I know the stock exchange volume, last 6 days have been very strong, and that's kind of representative where Bitcoin has gone. I've not looked at it in the last 2 days, to be honest, to sort of see where Bitcoin's volume is. But you're right, if we're just moving up with volume, it's probably actually the market makers that are moving this probably through the perp market, the price that is, rather than the spot. But that is something that you absolutely should be keeping an eye on. That being said, that's not ticking me over to bearish on the short term, on its own at the moment, I must admit. You put others chart kind of looks hopeful though. I've got the others down here. Let's just have a look. Where's others? That's dominance. That's versus BTC. Why don't I just have others market cap? I'm not sure. Let's see if I can find it. There we go. Don't know why I don't have that one. I mean, see, for me, I just see that straight away and just think it's had that similar kind of effect of rejecting form. I do get what you mean. If I get rid of this and we treat it a bit more like Tau and go, actually, there is still some sort of rising channel here. Just try and connect bodies. Maybe it'd be better on the daily. Something a bit like that. Where you could say, actually, we might be coming towards the bottom of that and there may well be that next move up. I do get that one, absolutely. But, even on the daily, when we're still looking at, it's kind of that level there, isn't it? I mean, I know you're taking some wicks and some bodies, but that's it. So this is, potentially could be some sort of compression. Now, I do think if Bitcoin has its move, it's going to lift everything with it. I just don't know if others, Total 2, Total 3, whichever one of those you want to look at, has got that momentum to really impact Bitcoin dominance and start that major alt season that we're going to need, that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on. Anyway, let's all leave that there, but thank you for that. So I just want to cover these just quickly. I know people have talked about them in Discord. The first one being Moody's downgrading the US debt, or the US debt. I think it was AAA. It's now gone to AA plus, or what have you. And the concern or the questions that people talk about in Discord is, what's that going to do to the market? Well, that was announced yesterday, and Bitcoin didn't really seem to care. It was talked that it was going to happen over the weekend, and we actually saw that Bitcoin closed on the weekly at a brand new weekly all-time high close, or highest close ever on the weekly time frame. Let me rephrase that. And why do I not think that this is necessarily a problem? Well, I think it's been talked about that this was going to be downgraded for quite some time. So if there was any concerns, it's probably been priced into the market. But if I'm perfectly honest, and I kind of share the sentiment here with the Treasury Secretary Besant, who he kind of went on and was trying to toe the party line, trying to give Moody's not necessarily any credit, but not stick it to them too badly. So you just explain how it is actually, just a bit of a lagging indicator, and actually, it takes them a while to collect all that information. And actually, what we might find in a few months' time, when the result, or when the results or the impact of these tariffs start rolling into the US, that actually we might see that their narrative changes. But actually, a little bit later on, he was obviously getting pushed. And so he just blatantly just said, who cares? Who actually cares? That was his words, not mine. Who cares down here? And he made the point, Qatar doesn't, Saudi doesn't, UAE doesn't, in relation to the fact that the president went over last week to the Middle East and made some pretty big trade deals over there with obviously countries that have an enormous amount of wealth. And so, them splashing it around the United States is only going to help to strengthen their economy, and we'll see whether or not it impacts on their debt. I mean, that debt clot is just fascinating to watch. But so I kind of do agree with that. I know people have talked about, is this sort of double top territory? We're going to start to actually now see that the market's going to fail off. I don't necessarily think that's the case at the moment. I mean, again, going back to let's put this on the daily. But if you go back to the S&P, strong reaction, and this looks almost like V-shaped reversal territory. Just look at how strong that is when you zoom it out. It feels right now that actually, whether it is just emotion or actually just market sentiment, the strength is still there. And there's certainly over the last couple of days there's been no major reaction to that downplane. Nasdaq is exactly the same. And if you have a look at some of the big players, Nvidia, Tesla, they're all still moving up quite nicely. So I'm not too worried necessarily about that. The other bit of positive news regulation that came through yesterday, which I think it's probably landed about midnight UK time, but that's where we actually saw price soar yesterday, back up to about 107,000. And that was that the Senate approved the Genius stablecoin bill, which stands for, and I've got to remember it, Guiding and Establishing National Innovation for US Stablecoins Act, or the Genius Act, passed yesterday to, some boos from the Republicans, so the Democrats, some concerns about that. But it's one of the more pro-crypto friendly regulatory bills that have gone through the US Senate at the moment. So a big step forward in continuing that legitimacy of where that's going. And I know, especially with the article that I'm going to talk about next, not everyone is a big fan of regulation, but it's going to happen. And we just need to position ourselves in the best possible way to try and continue to make money when that goes forward. And that leads me into this next one, which people have been talking about, which is this CARF. And I'll remember what that stands for in a moment. I will have a look at Doge, don't you worry. The CARF regulation or bill that is going through the UK at the moment. Now, I think it was Bijan that posted it in Discord, and it's not a new bill by any means. This was actually announced in October of 2023. And for those of you who were in RT back then, that was a time in which things changed, the MiCA rules and things changed around sort of Binance, and you suddenly couldn't buy any new tokens that were listed on any exchange and all that. And the government announced, and it wasn't the Labour government, it's Conservative government, announced that this was coming out. They were looking to bring out regulations. They were putting out some consultation papers throughout 2024 into 2025. They've now completed the consultation and they have drafted what this law is going to look like, and that is currently under review, which is why it's suddenly come about. But I think people's short memories, or maybe just people were back involved in the market, this suddenly feels like this has just dropped on our door. It's not actually the case. Now, what is the CARF? And I really want to try and just get through this as quick as I can, because in a way, directly, it's not going to affect us as individuals. And bear with me on this one for the people who know what I'm talking about. So the CARF is the Crypto Asset Reporting Framework. And effectively what it is any crypto business, so for us, exchanges, anyone that is dealing in selling of goods that handle cryptocurrency, they will be required by law to provide a whole host of information directly to the HMRC. So we've all heard of that rumor that Coinbase were doing that anyway, and probably other major exchanges, that they were just directly reporting all of our actions to the HMRC. So what we've brought into our exchange, what we've bought, what we've sold, any profit, net losses that we have made, that's gone to HMRC. And they're not going to provide a tax report for us, but they're just sitting on that information. And this is basically saying, right, we've determined what our list of information we're going to require from you is. It's extensive. We'll have a look at some of those in a moment. And if you want to operate in the UK, or if you want to handle citizens of the UK's funds, you need to provide this information. How can this affect us as individuals? Well, everyone's got until the 1st of January 2026 to get this in place. And so, let's just deal with exchanges, because that's primarily what we're dealing with. I don't think anyone's buying a Starbucks coffee with Bitcoin at the moment, but it would, in theory, affect them. They've got to come up with a way of being able to track all of that information and provide it. I don't know in what time scale. Don't know if it's real time or sort of block delivered every month. Information to the HMRC. Now, if they continue to operate in the United Kingdom and don't do that, there is a €399 fine per instance. So my view is that this could indirectly affect us in that if exchanges can't get their act together quickly, they may just say, right, we're not dealing with UK customers anymore. And so the big takeaway from this for me is, if you can't be bothered to look through this, and that's absolutely fine, it's 133 pages, why would you bother? I would start suggesting that you get multiple avenues of exchanges lined up before the end of this year. Because if the way things are going to pan out as we hope they are in the bull market and top at the end of Q4, what you don't want to see is you get to the end of Q4, you roll into 2026, and suddenly, as a UK citizen, your favorite exchange is not going to let you sell and get back to the bank. So start thinking about how you can manage that risk by spreading yourself across. Now, this framework is also planning to target DeFi and DEXs. No idea how they're going to manage that, but that's what they're saying. And the other thing that just to bear in mind is, and this is why I'm not necessarily so worried about it. Last 8 years, I've always done a crypto tax return. So I am just telling the HMRC to the best of my knowledge what I've done each year. But now we know that HMRC are going to have that information. So if you're the type of person that just thought, now I'm going to fly under the radar, I'm not going to bother with it, what you may end up getting is a little letter from the HMRC going, you haven't declared any CGT on your previous tax year, and we know that you have certainly made some profitable events through cryptocurrency during that period. And don't forget, it's not about cashing out to fiat that is the taxable event. It's the conversion of cryptocurrencies, even if it is crypto to crypto. So just bear that one in mind. This is some of the stuff that they want, and it is extensive. So if you're someone that doesn't like their information out on the internet, this might not be the industry for you anymore. But name, address, place of residence, TINs, I don't know what that is, identification number, probably, date and place of birth. Then we've got name and address and identifying number of the reporting crypto asset service provider, so the exchange in that instance, and then relevant information with the full name of the crypto, the amount paid, number of units, relevant transactions, the amount received, again, relevant transactions, fair market value for the number of units for each of the transactions and for the sales, for any payments that have been made. So if you did buy coffee with a Bitcoin and you happen to run a business that sold that coffee, that Bitcoin, you'd have to provide all that information from Joe Blogs that bought it off you. And yeah, anyway, it goes through that. So it is quite extensive. I honestly, for me, I'm not that worried about it just because I'm pretty open with HMRC anyway. But I am now going to look at how many exchanges and off-ramps I have available for the end of the year. This is to come into effect 1st of January 2026, and companies have until May 2027 in which they have to provide that first batch of information. How long after that? I don't necessarily know. And then I didn't realize, but in HMRC, there is actually guidance on confessing to the HMRC if you have unpaid tax on crypto assets. Again, seems fairly extensive with what information you need to provide. But if you do want to own up to having not provided any in the past, just go onto HMRC and look at the guidance there, and you can start confessing it. I've had mixed findings on whether or not this is going to be retrospective. I don't believe it is. I think the exchanges will only pass on information from the 1st of January 2026. So anything done up to that date, then they're not going to pass it on unless they've been doing it beforehand. So there's not going to be any retrospective, but you could still have actions against you because suddenly the HMRC is going to have a vast amount of information on you, and they may start to ask questions as to how that got there in the first place. But anyway, let's just leave that one as it is. I think 10 minutes on that was more than enough time, but I'll happily talk to anyone about it and give my opinion, not my professional opinion, on what it means in the chat later on. Discord chat, that is. Right. Couple more news articles, but I just want to talk just Bitcoin price action at the moment, because this is Bitcoin on the 12-hour time frame, and we're all quite familiar with this chart now. And I said a bit earlier on that the last few days it's been a little bit inconsistent in terms of the price action. You know, we go back to the weekend, we shoot up, we dump, but these are 12-hour candles, remember. We go up, we go immediately straight back down, immediately straight back up. And then today, at least we're finding some sort of stability. So it has been kind of difficult to call when this breakout is actually going to occur, because, you know, Sunday night, we get all excited thinking, this is it, we're happening, we're going to get to 107, and then we're going to move. And then suddenly, early hours of Monday morning, the market just crashes down. If you happen to go to bed early on Sunday night, 9 o'clock, say, and you woke up at 9 o'clock, you would have thought nothing had actually happened. Price had moved, within that 12-hour period. And so that has been a bit of a false start there. But even just looking at sort of the price action, ignoring the yellow box at the moment, all we've really done is fallen back to that sort of 103, 102 and a half level. We found some sort of stability from that, and we are forming a pretty good base on the shorter time frames at the moment in terms of that. Now, we are sandwiched between two liquidation points at the moment. Now, the 106 to 108, in theory, we should really be saying that actually this is up to here now because it was eaten away by that move, but I've left it on there just for the visualization. But you can kind of see we have started to dip into that. But also what's interesting is, those that are starting to get excited about the longs. So up here, prior to the move last week, we had the short liquidation levels, which just under 100,000, so 99,000 to 101,000. Obviously, with that move up, and it was a fast move up, that got cleared out completely. But being the degens that we are, we've obviously just thought, well, actually, now I'm just going to go long instead. And so within the space of it being above 100K, that level from 99.3 to 101,000 has started to build up very strongly again, very deep over a short period of time. And so this is now the long liquidations for the degens is right in this zone here. And so we've got that sandwich price action. Now, obviously we're in the 106 to 108 level at the moment. The 108 level is getting pretty close to all-time highs. Kind of feels like this is probably the path of least resistance, just given where we are. And the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 attempts that we've had to get into that sort of $101,000 level liquidation zones, we've been bought up quite aggressively. So it does feel like the bulls are quite willing to step in at that level, buy that back up and moving it up. So my view right now, personally, is I think we will be making a run for that all-time high. So 109,400, I think we kind of set it at. And then what do we do up there? We're starting to run into these historical fib levels as well. So maybe wouldn't be surprised if we did have some sort of reaction from that at 110 and we have to build. But generally, we're starting to move upwards and in the right direction. And well, this is the same chart I had earlier on. We've got a day and a half, so we can't really call anything. But let's just, suspend disbelief at the moment and just say, right, this candle's about to close in 5 hours, not in 1 day and 5 hours. That's the candle that we want to see, isn't it? Maybe a little bit more of a body to the north, but strong wick. This is a hell of a low test, building off support, and I haven't got the volume up there. This is the kind of move that you think is the precursor to that move up. And we start to see the narrative, and I get that people don't really buy into the golden cross, the death crosses, and we'll have a look at that a little bit later on. But when you've got strong indicators strong TA about to occur, then when you sort of tie into the fact that the ETF inflows are still incredibly strong at the moment, it really does feel that actually we are on the cusp of that next move up, that next breakout. And just to cover those ETF inflows at the moment, Canary in the coal mine, BlackRock, have just not bothered stopping. In the 7 days since we last spoke, they have bought $1 billion worth of BTC. So, they're not shy about adding to their portfolio. And if we actually have a look at sort of how they're building this, they now have, where is it? Balances. I'll have to just do it off the chart. It's 630, but they currently have 634,000 BTC on their books. Now, very impressive. We go back 4 weeks, so the 4th of April, they had 573, which was kind of about their low. I think it got down to 569. But in the space of 4 weeks, they bought 60,000 Bitcoin. So they are really re-engaged with just buying up as much Bitcoin as they can. And, between BlackRock and Strategy, which again, they have 578,000 Bitcoin. Someone pointed out to me, they actually have more Bitcoin than the Satoshi wallet. The Satoshi wallet, the infamous Genesis wallet, has 1 million Bitcoin. Okay, so 5% of the supply. These guys, between those two, have another 5%. They actually have over, it's about 5.5%. So 10% is taken up by effectively 3 wallets. Granted, I'm sure BlackRock have plenty of wallets, and the same with Strategy, but you get the point. 3 entities owning 10%. So these guys are buying it, and as long as they still are interested in doing it, it's going to move that price up. And then when we, I've got the same article here twice. Oh, okay. Yeah. We're starting to see repeated news articles talking about positive TA. I've just stuck with the Golden Cross one because that's what I'm going to talk about. And for those of you that aren't aware of what a Golden Cross is, must be pretty new to the market. The Golden Cross is just when the 50 EMA crosses over the 200. Sorry, in this instance, it's actually the simple moving average. So it's the 50 SMA crossing over the 200 SMA. Historically, it is just a sign that we are in, continuation pattern to the north whilst in a bull market. And we'll have a look at where it is in terms of sort of historically how well that has worked. But the green is the 200 moving average and the blue is the 50. And so the next couple of days, they are going to cross. And that's what people are talking about, the fact that actually when they cross, we generally see anywhere from a 30 to a 60% lift up in price, which is where people are getting this $135,000 to $150,000 Bitcoin from. But so let's just have a look at sort of previous crosses over. So we had this crossover here this on the daily chart, by the way. So we've had a cross here just prior to the election, and we did cross. And obviously from there, we saw that move. Let's just start. So that was when it happened. So we saw a 63% move from that cross. I'll talk about def crosses in a moment. We had another one at the beginning of the bull market. So down here where my face is at the moment. So there we would have had a price action from 33,000 to 73,000. So that was 117% price increase. It's not just in this cycle. So again, the second half of the bull run in 2021, and they don't happen often. That's why people talk about them. So from that, actually price went down initially. But from the moment it crossed to the top, it's a 53% increase. And then back in 2020, this is going to be a big one. Let me just zoom down again. There's the cross. The price was there. That was a 600% move. Now, that just shows you what can happen when people get locked up in their homes and given free money to stay at home and trade all day. But there's the move there. And again, it's happened in this cycle in 2017 bull run, but it actually only happened down here. And this is probably the monster one, really. So price action there was $300. And off that one golden cross, it went up 6,000% to just shy of 20,000. So this is why people talk about golden crosses on the daily time frame, because they do indicate, an intention or a desire for the market to continue climbing aggressively to the north. Now, why do people sort of discredit them? And the reason is because what they say is, well, by the time the golden cross happens, price has actually already moved up from the bottom. And all I would say is, of course it does, because they're moving averages. They have to. This is just a representation of the last 200 days and the last 50 days. So for the 50 to cross over the 200, prices already have had to have moved up. So am I going to trade off this one piece of information? No, of course I'm not. But it certainly is going to help me form a picture of where things are going and where things are. And when we look at def crosses do occur. And before we get on to def crosses, what I would say is def crosses and golden crosses occur at whatever state the market is in, whether it be a bull market or a bear market. We're only, we're only really interested in golden crosses during a bull market. And I would argue we're probably only really majorly concerned of def crosses in terms of causing us concern in a bear market, because that's sort of a bit of an indication where we're going. And what you can actually see is just prior to a lot of these a lot of these golden crosses in a bull market, a death cross has actually occurred. And so the prime example, I'm going to try and just change the color. Let's just do vertical line. So we had a death cross here. So that was a death cross there. And as King President's put, death crosses equal bottom. Well, in this instance here, yes, the market was moving down. The death cross occurred. And you're right, it's pretty close to the bottom there. We've had another death cross here. So again, that's the 50. So the 200 climbing above the 50. And the bottom ever so slightly before it, but it was kind of around the local bottom at the time because we're in the bull market. So we've got another cross here. And again, pretty much the local bottom. I mean, that was 25,000. We got a little bit lower there. And have you also noticed that a lot of these death crosses are occurring because the market is ranging? And that is just allowing the 200 EMA to catch back up with the 50 because it moves a lot slower. But actually, once we get out of that range, the 50 moves fast again and it climbs back through, and you can just see the angle of ascent each time because that's in the bull market. And this is just repeated several times. Now, where it's different is in the bear market. So you look at 2022, we've had the death cross here. The 50 is moving fast, but it's moving down now. So that's where we get that real notification that actually it's working there. And then there's a whole sort of TA kind of, well, are we having some sort of retest, which we did in that instance, got a rejection from the 200 EMA and continue to fall back down. But that's why we see it there. We had a death cross after the first peak in 2021, death cross here, funnily enough, as King Peasant, great name by the way, indicate that actually also marked the bottom, 28,000, for the market start to stabilize, and then look, rallies up. And this is what annoys people, upsets people, whatever the term is. There's a prime example to use here. My face is probably in the way. Let's just get rid of some of these. The bottom happened at the death cross at 28,000, but the golden cross didn't occur until 45,000. So another seven, pretty much 60-70% increase in the market before it happened. And then so people are like, well, we could have spotted trading. The amount of times we have to say is not about getting 100% of the pie. It's about using TA, whatever it may be, and whatever timescale works for you to place the highest probable positive outcome you can make in the market. And if this is one of the indicators that does it for you, then fine. There may be other things on lower time frames that may help you to reduce that, but we're just looking at the indicator itself and its overall sentiment on what the market does. And yes, of course, there are instances where it actually doesn't work. We had what's happened there? I think we had a golden cross just prior to March 2020. And we all know what happened in March 2020. So yeah, golden cross here. So February 2020, we had a golden cross and off to the races. Then the world got locked down, and funnily enough, the market dropped and the 50 EMA came crumbling down with it. We got a death cross and then we got a golden cross again. And we had that weaving pattern. I mean, in the space of 6 months, we had 2 golden crosses and 2 death crosses. Pretty confusing kind of time there. But that's just, there are always going to be occasions with TA where it doesn't pan out. So I'm not saying that this is it, lock, stock, got a golden cross and someone's written a news article about it, so we're guaranteed to go to 150,000. But the evidence has kind of suggested that actually previously, golden crosses have been very good indicators that actually we're going to have some positive momentum within the market. And again, by the time this golden cross happens in 2 days' time, we might already be above 110,000. And that'd be a 50% increase from where the market was at its bottom of 74,000. That just is part of the game. But this is just a confirmation that actually we may be moving on and moving up from that. So definitely something to sort of bear in mind. I take articles like this with a pinch of salt, particularly when they throw a price target in there, but it doesn't negate the fact that golden crosses have been typically very good sentiment indicators and predictors of where the market's going to go. I'm trying to see if there's anything important in this article. I don't think there necessarily is. We've made the point from it. Okay, let's have a look at some of the other things. So we're on the higher time frame, on the weekly time frame now with Bitcoin. This was this bull flag we were talking about last week. I don't know where the stem's gone, but we can draw that back in. We can move that going from where we are, and it's kind of giving us this roughly 150,000. But the point I'm trying to make, because last week we talked about, we just do the replay. Nope. Let me end that. Sorry about this. Let's try that one again. So last week we were talking, or I was talking, that we haven't actually had a close above 104,300, 104,500 on the weekly time frame, and that's what we wanted to see. And then lo and behold, Sunday night, and it didn't look like it was going to happen on Sunday, because, as I said, at lunchtime we were down about 102. I was wondering whether or not we were going to keep the 100k level, but actually this is the weekly close, 106,500. It's the highest weekly close Bitcoin has ever achieved. Then you look at the candle next to it, 5.5 days to go. Let's not really get too caught up with it. But the fact of the matter is, we've had a very strong candle. Well, I mean, look at these weekly candles, all of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weekly candles, green weekly candles in a row to the upside. This is looking, so far, 2 days in, very strong looking candle there. We've not too much news to necessarily come out to rock the boat on that this week. We'll have to obviously monitor it with 5 days to go, but looking for that strength. And then we go to, I'm sorry, I deleted it. Should get better about this, really. How it gets there and all that, fair enough, but we're looking at potential targets of where that could be. Now, 150 level, they're kind of the bottom levels that people talked about where this market may peak, and we'll have to start to think about, when we get there, what that's doing to the rest of the market. But the point, going from this chart back to the Bitcoin dominance chart, this how strong this is looking compared to how strong other altcoins are looking. It really feels like Bitcoin is going to lead the way, and that means Bitcoin dominance is likely going to lead the way. And so I'm still of the opinion, it's not on there, don't know why, but we can draw it again. But that 71% level is probably my next main target for where we might see a genuine full-on alt season. This pullback from 65 to 61%, 4%. I mean, you saw what BitTensor did in that time frame, 160 to 490. It moved strong. We can get that, but from 70 down to 50%, we're really going to see that alt season. For those of you who haven't seen an alt season yet, it is it's an emotional time. You think it's hard to control your emotions in a bear market. It is even harder to control them when a genuine alt season is going and you've positioned yourself in alts. It's face melting. But I think we're going to see that. We're certainly going to retest 65 again. That is an absolute cert for me. And I think we're going to make that move towards 70 before we turn it around, which may well coincide with that strong move up to 150. What we then need to see is the total market cap to continue, but actually we need to see that rotation from Bitcoin into altcoins, and I won't go through that. For those of you who didn't see it, it's out now on Simon's YouTube channel, on Vimeo. So through the portal, my talk on Bitcoin from the cuddle and just sort of dominance, I go into a bit more detail there. So just check it out. News events, as I say, not too much to come through. Although I did see that President Trump speaks popped up today. That's always a worry. And I think, I've probably said this now for 7 or 8 weeks on the trot at the moment, but despite any TA that we've seen, I still feel that the market at the moment is very much driven by the news. You just look at how fast the fear and greed indicator is moving. You see how fast the market's recovered from the negative news of the tariffs when they originally happened in the March, beginning of April, how it's recovered from there. We've seen that pausing in the tariffs with China, or the reduction in the tariffs, should I say, for the next 90 days. We haven't really seen any developments from that. There's obviously still tariffs discussions that need to be happening with Europe, which is obviously another big player for America. We've had President Trump trying to swing in and create that ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. I mean, he spun it well after his talk with them both, even trying to say that he was informing the Pope what was going on. Don't know why he was dragging the Pope into it, but that hasn't really resolved itself at the moment. And so whilst we haven't had any major negative news announcements in the last couple of days, one of those house of cards, unfortunately, could topple us and potentially just cause another dip. So you just got to bear that in mind. I do think news is key at the moment. I think just the market is on edge, and it doesn't help when the Fed don't cut the interest rates. I think I didn't talk about it because it hasn't happened yet, but I think Trump's trying to get something through the Senate again today about tax breaks and all that kind of stuff, which I'm sure is not really going to help the Fed in driving or leading to that interest rate cuts, because it's probably likely going to lead to a little rise in inflation. But anyway, we'll leave that one to go. Might not get through the houses. We'll see what happens there. I mentioned fear and greed. It's at 68. I don't think that's a particularly bad place to be. Yeah, it's in the greed zone at the moment, but we're approaching all-time high again. That's to be expected. Alt season, still 23, I think, on the other altcoin indicator, which I don't have up. It's even lower, 16. Yes, there's not many. We are really deep in Bitcoin season at the moment. But that's that move up there from 16 to 31 on this. That was that move at the beginning of the month, which we really saw altcoins pop. But we've come back down to the lows, the yearly lows of 16. Talked about dominance. Okay, yeah. I didn't know when to talk about this, but I'm going to, because someone sent me a message after watching my cuddle video about trading Bitcoin and Tau, and one of the messages I received was, why stick with Bitcoin if Bitcoin's only going to get to, they said 250,000, doesn't necessarily matter, maybe a 1.5 times where we currently are, when BitTensor has the potential to go a lot higher. And a lot of people have been throwing out some pretty wild numbers. So the talk of 22,000 in terms of BitTensor, I've cheated a little bit on this chart, but this is just an illustration for you to just try and just suggest that just sticking solely in alts, for me personally, I don't think it's going to work, and it's not going to pay off. BitTensor at the moment is just over $400. Okay, people have spoken about BitTensor getting as high as 22,000 in this cycle. This is on a linear chart, and I've done that just so we can fit it all in. You can kind of see where it sits. To get to 22,000, it would need to go up from this position over 5,000%. And if we're still working on that happening before the end of the year, that's only 6 months. So the question that I sort of say there is, well, where's that liquidity coming from? And I asked that rhetorical question a couple of Saturdays ago in the cuddle, was, where are we getting that liquidity in such a short space of time for the likes of any altcoin, BitTensor, whatever, to get these astronomical levels? I just don't see it. I see right now the money is in Bitcoin. That seems to be the major player in town. Altcoins, some of them are moving, but whether or not they've actually got genuine volume behind them, I'll wait and see. And for me, this is just, I just don't realistically see it. And if we have a look at, I don't know what chart I put it on. Was it this one? Yes, it was. So this is total market cap. So we're currently set at 3.3 trillion, and the talk of getting to 12 trillion, that's 4 times the current market cap. We're not talking about billions here, we're talking about trillions. That's a lot of money. Again, 9 trillion, that's three times as much as what's already in the market to be washed into the market over the next 6 months. I don't really see that being the play. If I'm being completely and utterly honest there, I don't know where that money's going to come from. We have a look at interest rates. Next month's interest rate, still 95% probability that it's not going to get cut. We're running out of time, and this can change all the time. We've got 30 days until this rate cut's going to come through. So we've got plenty of time for that to happen. But the data at the moment and the actions that Trump and his team are making are not really twisting Powell's arm enough to go, right, okay, we'll do an emergency rate cut. So, where do we see it? I know people have talked about money supply. And here's money supply for you. So the blue one is US, the red one is global. The red one, look to the left-hand side for where it sits, which is currently at 107 trillion. And the US, it's lagging. It's March. It's actually February. Is basically 22 trillion. Yes, they are going upwards, but look at these spikes here. These were the bull runs. Okay, so 2020, 2021. Look at how steep they were going up when we were ridiculously printing money. That's not happening at the moment. So there's no real confirmation to me that that is going to happen anytime soon. Now, of course, things can change very quickly, and I would love to have egg on my face for both of those. I just don't necessarily see it. So going back to, well, why am I doing that? I've lost the chart I was on now. I'm just using Bitcoin and just putting it into altcoins and trading the altcoin, which may temporarily be outpacing Bitcoin, and then just moving that back to Bitcoin. Because I don't think Bitcoin has got much of a move left. Maybe it doubles with where we are. So I'm trying to then take advantage of using that Bitcoin and just playing it against alts that are doing very well. And that Bitcoin dominance is a perfectly valid trade that I kind of touched on that cuddle video. And there's plenty of videos in the portal about trading Bitcoin dominance. Maybe next week I'll talk about it in a bit more detail. But all I'm doing is, instead of you doing TAO versus USD, I'm just doing TAO in this example versus BTC. Or I'm doing NEAR versus BTC, and I'm using BTC as the underlying asset that I swap. So when you trade TAO, for example, you take your dollars and you buy TAO, and then when TAO price moves up, you sell it back into dollars and you've made some money. Well, I'm using my BTC to buy TAO. When TAO goes up in value versus BTC, I sell it back into BTC and I get more BTC, and there it is. And in that way, I don't actually care about the actual dollar price of either BTC or TAO, because it's irrelevant to me, because I'm actually doing a different trading pair. So it's something difficult to potentially have to get your head around, but once you got your head around it, it's just another way to play it. And my theory really right now is that the alt season that we think we're going to get, I don't think it's going to be as strong as people expect. I would be amazed if BitTensor got to 3,000. That is an ATH from where we are at the moment in a market that's not got that much liquidity. And I'd be delighted if it got that high. That's still outpacing Bitcoin by, 4 or 5 times what we think Bitcoin's going to get to. So I've got that in the back of my mind. Sorry if I didn't explain that very well. Perhaps I should have done it with some other charts and some diagrams, but that's where I sit with that one. Let's get into the actual chart in itself. And we'll start with Bitcoin. We've kind of covered the daily. So these charts here, for those that are new or just joined, I know there's been quite a few members that have joined this month. So I've got EMAs on there. I've got the 10, which is the blue, the 20, which is the red, the 50, which is the light blue and it's got the purple shading around it. The yellow is the 200, and then right down here, a purple color is the 800 EMA. And obviously that'll change on the time frames. And then the reason my candles are all colorful is they're just vector candles. And so the vectors effectively just show increased volume in that particular, increased volume in that particular time frame, depending on whether it goes up or down. So that's where that is. Now, Bitcoin has sort of made that move for me. We're on the daily. We've got that W we talked about. So double bottom down here. Nice bottom in action. We've had that move up. Rise one consolidation for me. Really, there's talk of whether or not this here, it's messy now. Let's get rid of that. If that is a consolidation, I'm not going to call that one myself personally, because it didn't get through the 50 EMA in the first place, and it certainly didn't get through with volume. So yes, it formed the left at the start, the right hand side of that W formation, but it didn't get through it. Whereas, we've broken through daily time frame, we've broken through the 50 EMA with a green vector candle showing that volume, and we've moved up. Now, again, that consolidation period, I would have liked to have got back to the 50 EMA. We didn't get there, but I'm not going to stop that from happening. So for me, that's a W. That's one. That's the consolidation period. That's move 2. For me, this is the consolidation period. Again, we haven't broken out of it, okay? we need a vector candle daily time frame. We'll have a look at lower time frames in a moment. Daily time frame for us to confirm the consolidation period has ended. This could quite easily come all the way down to here, to wherever the 50 EMA is by the time it gets down there, and still be within that consolidation period. So, we could fall as far as 96,000 without invalidating the fact that this is actually a consolidation period for Rise 2. So don't, sort of think, oh no, it's going to fall through those. We want to see, I do want to see it retest those 50 EMAs. Now, maybe on the daily, that's a bit too much to ask for. And we don't know how high it's going to go, but I think we've only had a Rise 2. We should have at least one more rise on the card somewhere. How high that takes us and how far, for how long, we'll have to just wait and see. Going down onto the 4 hour, I should have cleared those first. Let's get rid of that. We can kind of see that the 4 hour, again, so where do you take the W from? There is, in my opinion, there's kind of two Ws. There's a W that lines up with the daily, which is that W, looking pretty messy. Or there's this W here. It's little W, which is like almost like a classic W there. And if you were to take that one, kind of gives you a different rise count, because you're suddenly like Rise 1, consolidation, Rise 2, consolidation, Rise 3 now, consolidation. And the question is, if we're in Rise 3, are we going to see some sort of M formation? Where's that M formation forming? Or are we actually, this consolidation's happened, it's just reset it all and we're going to go for 3 more up? I mean, this candle at the moment, I mean, look, we're at 107,000 at the moment, making a nice move up. This is as high as we have been since the inauguration. Let's not, the level of sentiment in around the inauguration, we're now as high as we've been there. So this is it. Always happens on a Tuesday in an Avenger call, but we are having that battle at the moment. But can you just see, we'll just ignore that blue candle for now. I'm kind of excited staring at it. In this instance, what I'm seeing here, we've got vector candles bursting out through it, but in the consolidation periods, we are also resetting back to the 50 EMA, breaking back through, resetting back to the 50 EMA, breaking through with vector candles again. You see vector candles each of these times breaking through, resetting back to the 50 EMA. So it does feel like we've got a genuine 3 count going on. It's just where that now transpires, and also how long this goes out for. These consolidation periods could go on a while, as I say, could even dip back down, just drawing random circles now. Or we have, it does happen. I think it's a get out of jail free card for those of us that follow market maker theory, where actually after 3, you just get it reset and you go for another, at least 1 rise up, if not a full 3. So certainly something to have a look about there. But I sort of see our micro level, that 100K level is obviously, from a psychological point of view, is the boundary. But if we really wanted to sort of hone it in, I would argue that actually sort of 103 is kind of where I'm looking at, which kind of would clear out this vector, maybe get to the bottom of the 50 EMA cloud, But right now we're showing some real strength coming through. Kind of want that to turn to a blue, it's just changed. We've just closed it, so it has closed as a blue vector candle. So that is with 150% more volume. For those that aren't aware of what vector candle coloring is, than normal. Would have been nice for that to have been a green, but we are where we are. You can go down lower time frames, and I'm sure it probably will be a green, that last one. Yep, there it is. Green vector candle there. And I say it before, when you get on the lower time frames, obviously there's a lot of vector zones that have been untaken. But in these consolidation periods, they don't normally remain. They don't normally stay. So if we are going to consolidate, I think it will look to take some of these. And that's why I say that 102 down here, that'd be my bottom target. If it got down to there and we saw it bounce from it, that would be a strong indication for a long for me. I don't think we're going to get it down as low as that, especially with what we've happened here. Maybe today's move down was as low as it got, 104. And now we're looking for that sort of that move up. But again, we might just be running into a bit of trouble here. So anyway, let's look at some others. Bit sensor, go back onto the daily. Oh, sorry, Mr. Tacos has put, still waiting on the Trump announcement. He is with the Secretary. That's what I saw as well. So yeah, you're right. You go back here. I saw this. So due to speak with the Defense Secretary at the White House. Now, this wasn't on earlier on today. So this has just popped up. And so, yeah, now for me, it's going to be 1 a.m. I ain't staying awake for it. But maybe he is going to announce something. Or it'll just be that they've just signed some deal with Lockheed Martin or something random like that. But the problem is, whenever Trump speaks, you just never know what's going to come out. So, yeah. But, yeah, good spot. Back to Tau. Okay. So Tau on the daily. I mean, you know, if we just run the same before, let's give it to that. So for me, W formation potentially there. Some people talked about it actually being an inverted head and shoulders. Either way, similar kind of bottoming pattern that's happened. We've seen that move up. Now, again, if I don't count it for Bitcoin, I can't count it for Tau. So I can't see this move up to 260 and then a pullback as being the first leg. One, it seems too short. Two, we didn't get through. We didn't get through the 50 EMA to start off with. So I would actually say that that's one, and this is the consolidation. Relatively short. We've had two, but can you see now? I'll zoom in. Whereas Bitcoin's consolidation was flat, this is a more angular consolidation. This is what you typically see. And what it ends up normally doing, which it did yesterday, is recovering the vector candle. So most of you probably know this. I feel like I'm teaching you to suck eggs. But so that vector candle happened there. And what would have been formed from that is a vector zone like this. And then it would have had a 50% line approximately there. And what we normally have a look at is price action coming down and certainly challenging that 50%. And it did take the 50 on yesterday's candle. Obviously, it would have been green, this, just illustrating where it is. And then it snapped back up. And then we're at the moment, we're just having a battle with this 20 EMA. So maybe it's done as much damage it needs to do in terms of sort of consolidating through that vector. But I personally wouldn't be surprised if BitTensor, continue to move down whilst this moved up. And we kind of see that battleground at about 380. So I'm in a bit of a quandary, in terms of how do you manage your risk in terms of sidestepping, because we don't want to give too much away. A lot of us got back in at sort of that 260. Maybe some of us were better than me, getting in sort of 230, 200 level. But we don't want to give it all back. But with a 200 EMA and the 50 EMA and it's some consolidation with Bitcoin about ready to make a move, it just feels like the risk to reward of taking that sidestep is not necessarily there for me. I'd really have to lose that 350 level before I was considering making that move. Now, what we can do, we didn't do it for Bitcoin because just too much stuff can be a bit overwhelming, is we can throw a bit of a fib on here and just see if there's anything that lines up. And at the moment, look, the 236, so that 374 level is going to tie in with the 200 EMA, which is going pretty flat, 50 EMA coming up and price action moving back down. That would be the level, if you were looking for a long potentially, you see a good bounce from there, potential for a good long. It's almost a full recovery of that vector candle. And then we'd see that next move up. Where that next move took us to, I mean, maybe sort of that 700 level re-challenging that all-time high. There's certainly vector zones in and around there. That would be my target of interest. So let's have a look. I mean, I'd definitely look at that one, but I would, you'd have to mark that top. What we can also say is, I mean, we still actually haven't had a close above this level here, for high, bang on. I mean, if we zoomed in, we might find it exactly. But anyway, pretty darn close from it. Nice sort of V reversal pattern. Just a standard pullback. You can't climb that high that fast without some sort of pullback. So don't stress on BitTensor is my view there. I mean, unless you're in subnets, but I want to leave that there. That's probably very stressful. On the 4 hour, what we can actually see is the 4 hour count potentially looking a little bit different, because what we've got this W formation here, Green vector candle coming through, coming back down, up, coming back down, up, coming back down. So this is actually suggesting that we're in the third vector. So we might be looking at an M formation. And so that actually is something to just consider. What we might then end up seeing is a move back up, maybe as high as sort of 480-ish, not quite getting higher than that. And then we start to see this correction back down. And it didn't have to go miles back down. Don't think it was going all the way back down to 160, but just some sort of form there. But we are under the 50 EMA at the moment. We're getting squeezed between the 50 and the 200 right now. So yeah, just something to bear in mind. I won't go through near because it's only me that's in it. Link. I mean, a lot of these, let's just put them on the daily, just so we can have a feel for them rather than actually retrading them. But they're not looking too bad. I mean, obviously they're nowhere near the highs of where they were, but in terms of like climbing out, we're seeing sort of moves up, pulling back down, moves up again, pulling back down. It's kind of what we want to see. We're getting back to, support and resistance levels, EMA levels. Feels like certainly with Link, we're on the cusp of maybe a move up there on the daily. Near, again, I've obviously drawn a fib on here from previous times. It's moving back up, strong bounce off that fib level, which was the 382. It's come back to the 50 EMA, which is also the 236. Another good opportunity for it to move back through. Ondo, again, I'm only going through these because they're the ones I hold in my portfolio. Just nice moves up and back, up and back. Unlike BitTensor, which was just a strong move up, we're having a bit of a sustained pullback. These have been slow and steady in terms of the moves up and sort of the recoveries back. So it's kind of what you want to see. Even SPX now, meme coins have been doing quite well. Fartcoin in particular, although I'm not in that. But again, nicely moving around there. So I did sell some BTC for Tau down at this level here. We are going lower. If we lose that 50 EMA, I will just abort that and move it back to Bitcoin and just take that one on the chin there. But it's not looking as strong as I had hoped. Maybe I was getting a bit too greedy and should have got out earlier. But we are where we are with that. Ethereum. So Ethereum's had that, awakening. I think that's the best way of calling it. Again, that W move up. It's had another move up here. This is just nicely consolidating. And what I like with this one is, yes, we moved away from the 50 EMA, but we're actually consolidating in and around the 200 and the 800 EMA. So we are managing to hold that right now. It's obvious, well, not obvious, but it's logical that actually would have some sort of resistance in and around here, which we have been doing. I don't really want it to wait till it gets back down to sort of 2,100, but we may have to. Not that I'm in Ethereum, but it's kind of more following the Bitcoins just consolidating sideways rather than anything else. But yeah, that next move, and for me, probably targeting 3,000. These vector zones up here, obvious levels, and then it's just support and resistance to previous price levels. Makes sense that would be where we were looking. If you wanted to do a reverse fib, see if it gave you any other clues. I mean, we can now see why we turned around. It's hit the 618. It's come back down. It's hit the 5 quite nicely and moved back up. And then 3,200 aligning with that previous price action there, getting through those vector zones. So maybe that's the top part of where it spikes before having some sort of turnaround. Anything else really to go through? I don't think so. I think we've kind of rabbited on for an hour and 10 minutes, hour and 5, since I was talking, you couldn't hear me for the first 5 minutes. But we'll leave that one there. Oops, what's happened? There we go. So, yeah, pleasantly optimistic, I think, is where I see myself. Try not to focus too much on the days. Today we went all the way down to 104 and now we're at 107. We're just seeing these fluctuations at the moment. News is still the king, in my opinion. So just be mindful of that when you're trading. If any of you are doing any perp trades, I don't like to leave them open for too long, just because I think the news can move faster than I can stay awake. But yeah, just do it with sensible risk, and just bear that one in mind. I'm looking for longer term entries on some, but Bitcoin hasn't really given me an opportunity for a long term entry. If we fell to 100k or below, I'm looking at a long term entry, but before then I'm just going to be playing other ones. There will be a trading pub on Thursday. I go on holiday on Thursday, but whilst I'm away, and it just gives me a break from the kids for a few hours. So I will still be around on Thursday for next week's call, but I'll just be doing it in sunny Spain. But yeah, if you've got any questions, just drop them in. I'll still be around on Discord. Thank you for no questions on subnets as well, because I think I just don't know anything about them. So it saves me having to look into it all. Enjoy the rest of your week. Keep an eye on where Bitcoin's going. As I say, keep an eye on what Trump's doing. And yeah, hopefully this time next week, I'll have a beer in my hand, which will be almost certain, and we'll be toasting an all-time high that's happened either on the call or just prior to it. Speak to you all soon, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening. Cheers now.